following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zig Zag Man, Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco and across the moat from Oakland. I am blessed to speak with some of the most interesting people on the planet regularly. And today is no exception. My old friend, he's not old, but he's an old friend, and he's a returnee to the airwaves, fourth or fifth time. He's been on different shows talking about different stuff, mostly baseball, but I don't mind that because I love baseball and I love spring training. So it's perfect timing. Welcome back, Gabriel Schechter. How are you, Gabriel?
I'm fine, Ralph, and happy to be with you. In spring training, I've watched a couple of ball games already. I've listened to part of a Mets broadcast. I'm getting. It's good to be out of the void. That's what I call the winter, the void.
They are already two injuries into it, and it isn't even Friday. It is Friday.
Mid-season form. They're right on track.
Unbelievable.
Ralph, think about how many outfielders are going to have to get injured for Cespedes to play 3 weeks in August. They're just right on track.
Right. I am counting on them signing Adam Jones. That he's still out there as a free agent. I hope.
I've always liked him.
Yeah, solid guy. More for his demeanor and his class. That certainly can't help in today's day and age. And the man has played some great baseball for the past 10, 15 years. He is admittedly on the downside, but,
yep.
He'd be a great piece. And
he'd be another piece very much like Cano. Well past his peak, but still pretty good and could be very valuable. You know, the year they went to the series, they got Neil Walker and Asdrubal Cabrera, and they were, kind of the same way, maybe a little younger, but both past their prime, very solid guys who helped them at least get there.
Asdrubal had come cheaply. He was said to have no range, and he gave them a great year at shortstop the year they won it. I think that was 2015. When they got Cespedes. And, Cespedes could still in July or August could come back and spark them. That's not out of the question. But they've got to turn this injury jinx around. We're into the third year of craziness.
Yeah.
Injuries. Every team has injuries. This is injuries beyond belief. And 2 years ago, they fired their entire training staff, the team doctors from top to bottom, new regime, and last year.
Right.
You can't do that you can't fire the doctors every year.
Well, on the other hand, you might say that under their regime, they had also brought along all these minor leaguers who are now breaking down. So it might have been endemic to their whole system. It's hard to know. It's just so hard to predict. But I do think in general, today's players are more muscle bound and they pull and strain muscles much more easily, or at least maybe we know about them. And I think the Mets were one of the teams guilty of overtraining their players.
Given Mejia, the relief pitcher who was suspended, Familia, it wouldn't surprise me if they dabble just as much as as ever in illegal stuff and trying to beat the chemist. What happens is they bulk up enough to put strain on tendons and ligaments, which you can't increase in strength. You're born with those. And Mark McGuire was a good example. You put too much strain on your feet, carrying 280 pounds on a skinny frame, it's gonna take its toll. And that could be it. But, they got Lowry, and he passes a physical, and he comes up lame. So maybe you should be blaming the doctor. Who examined this guy? On the other hand, it would have sent Wilmer Flores to, where was it, Milwaukee, instead of having to stay in with the Mets in 15. That was a forever moment when he...
Indeed.
16 in the Mets system, went to all the academies, comes from a different country, learns the language. He's a Met all the way, and they pull him off the field and trade him, and they don't even... It's great. Typical Metdom. For 50, 60 years now, we've been going through this, and but it is interesting. Let's put it that. It's like.
Ralph, speaking of 60 years ago, I have my first spring training memory is from 1962.
Oh wow!
The birth of the Mets. I was about to turn 11 years old, and my parents hired an artist to do a portrait of me. Who knows why, but they did, and he was going to do it in charcoal. This was in March of 1962. I was a very hyper kid and a baseball nut already, and the only way my parents could get me to sit for this portrait, it took 4 days, it was timed with the first Mets spring training games on radio, and the only way I would sit still was to be listening to the Mets game. And as soon as the game ended, the artist packed up and left and came back the next day when the game started again. That's how I got my portrait done.
Wow, and they were spring training games.
Oh, yeah. And then the next year, when I was about to turn 12, I grew up about 10 miles from Yankee Stadium in New Jersey. And watching a Yankees-Reds exhibition game in March, one of the announcers mentioned, this hotshot kid on the Reds, he might win the second base job, and he actually turns 22 the first week of the season on April 14th. And I had a holy shit moment because that's my birthday. And I said, I'm gonna root for this guy. And what's his name? Oh, Pete Rose. Okay, I'll root for this guy. He's my new favorite player. Replace Vada Pinson. And I hadn't even seen him bat. He became my favorite player. And you can imagine what a roller coaster ride that has been. But that was from watching TV in spring training.
You mentioned your dad was a Red fan, or?
Yes, he was born in Cincinnati. His favorite player growing up was Ed Roush. What he particularly admired about Ed Roush was that Roush would refuse to go to spring training. He didn't like it. He was busy on his farm in Indiana in the off season. He didn't think he needed it, and he would hold out till opening day and then go out and get 3 hits. My father thought that was wonderful. So I was born a Reds fan. It's sort of a congenital defect. But then we all became, my parents and I became Mets fans together. Excuse me?
Hall of Fame center fielder, Roush.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. On Star of the 1919 world champion Reds. You betcha. And a man who refused to play more than one season for John McGraw.
Oh, did not know that.
He held out for a year rather than play for McGraw. Then he eventually went and back and finished out in Cincinnati. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this about the Mets. Do you remember in that spring, the New York Post had a contest of naming the starting lineup for the first game? And you sent a postcard in with, and you could send as many postcards as you want. You had to say who was going to be cut.
Really nice.
What have you. And the prize was an autographed baseball by all the Mets.
Ooh, nice.
But I wanted that prize so badly. Every day, who was cut? Was it, are they going to play
second
base, at shortstop, at third base?
Yeah, is Charlie Neal gonna play? Where's he gonna play? Well,
Well, you mentioned 63. I was at opening day at 63, and he was indeed playing third base. He played most of the year at second base the first year.
Yeah.
And, first pitch of the game, ground ball to third, Neal boots it. So that's what I remember the opening day.
Yeah, and it turned out they were in mid-season form too.
Yes, it didn't take long. They just like in the spirit of Ed Roush. How about that?
Yeah, indeed. Ralph, I have a story to tell you.
Please tell me as many stories as you like. Zug me a Geschichte. That's what. If you're listening out there and you really love Yiddish like we all do, that means tell me a story.
Ralph, this is a story about how I got married to my first wife because of spring training. Is that enough of a tease?
Yes, it is.
I moved to Las Vegas in 1980. I was working on a novel. I was in the middle of writing a string of unpublishable novels. And I got involved in the poker industry, first trying to beat it, then I joined it. And in October of 1980, I went to work as a dealer at a small local casino called the Bingo Palace, which is now the Palace Station and the flagship casino of a whole string of casinos. But then it was just a little hole in the wall in the desert that had a big bingo room and a poker room. And there I became acquainted with a woman named Judy, who is famous in Las Vegas poker circles as one of the first women to deal poker in Las Vegas, originally from Los Angeles. And she was a Las Vegas legend before I ever met her. And she was a dealer on the graveyard shift. I was working on day shifts. And she, as often as not, when I came to work, she was not dealing, she was playing. Terrific player and, a sick gambler. But so she'd be there, and she's this kind of live wire, fiery redhead with an outrageous sense of humor. Just a magnet for every man who walked into a poker room. I mean that almost literally. So I watched her carrying on in these games and never talked with her. And at the start of 1981, she threw a Super Bowl party, which I found out was a tradition. There was a Super Bowl party in her house every year for about 15 years. This was my first one, and I walked into her house, and I fell in love at first sight with the house. The first thing you saw when you walked in was this antique full-size pool table. And then the fireplace pit with the big JBL speakers and the swimming pool in the back. And, nice. And I didn't talk to her at the party until it was time to go. I had actually come with friends, and I said, thanks, great time. And she fell on the floor and pretended to pitch a fit because I was going. This was the first inkling that I had that she'd had her eye on me. But I left. So that was, the end, early February. And about a month later, I came into work one day, and she asked me if I wanted to rent a room from her. The story was she had gotten divorced the previous September. And it was her house. She got the house. And it had 2 spare bedrooms, and she was in the habit, always had been, always was, of renting out the spare rooms. Friends needed a place to stay cheaply. She was like a halfway house for poker people in Las Vegas. And she told me she was about to kick out one of her roommates. He was behind on the rent. He was a degenerate gambler, and he was going to go, and was I interested in renting a room? I said, let me think about it. I'll let you know tomorrow. Came in the next day. I said, sure, I'll go for it. She said, well, that's great, but the guy actually paid the rent last night, so I really can't kick him out. But I promise the next time he's a day late with the rent, he's out and you're in. I said, okay, fine. I said, excuse me?
Obviously he likes you.
I said, that sounds fine. I was wondering how to get back into that house. That's actually what I said to her. The house, still the house. Wondering how to get back in that house. And she says, well, if you feel that way, just come over for dinner. So a few nights later, I went over for dinner. She's a great cook. Shrimp parmesan, fantastic. Then we sat up all night talking, just talking. First time actually talking. And around 6 a.m., I mentioned that, I have to be to work at 10. She thought I had the day off. She was ready to go all night. And she said, so that was the end of that night. But here's the catch. You ready for the next chapter? Spring training. 1981 was the first year that I went to spring training. Excuse me. My best friend George invited me down. He had a friend living down there that we could stay with. And we were driving down to Phoenix overnight, Monday into Tuesday. We had tickets for games Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I mentioned, Judy, when can you come over again, right? I said, well, like in 3 days, I'm going down to Phoenix for spring training for a few days. You going to be there Wednesday? I said, yeah. She said, well, believe it or not, in the divorce, I got 2 tickets to the Lakers-Suns game in Phoenix Wednesday night. You want to go? Well, sure. Yeah. It was her weekend. She had a van, and she said, well, I'll just drive down in my van, and, we exchanged phone numbers, gave her the phone number where I was going to be staying, and we'll figure it out. Fine. So, Wednesday morning, the phone rang at like 8 o'clock at my friend's place. He had gone off to work, and I fought my way out of the sleeping bag and got to the phone just as the line went dead. and I knew it had been Judy. And she called, no answer, now what? No calls that morning. We went to our ball game that afternoon. George and I came back to his friend Joe's house late in the afternoon. No phone calls, no nothing. This was before answering machines in little apartments that he had, and so nothing. So we had a very important decision to make. A, take me over to the Coliseum and look around and try to find her. And if she's not there, just drop me there and hope she shows up. Or do we just go out and start bar hopping now? Well, the bar hopping won. Now, if I had known Judy, as I knew her later, I would have known that she lost that phone number almost as soon as she got it. And she did go down to Phoenix, and she did go to the Coliseum, and she sat out there for 2 hours waiting for me to show up. And she finally just gave the ticket to some guy. Right? So Thursday morning, phone rang again. Again, I got to it just in time to miss a call. And so then I was sure, well, now what? Because George had decided to stay a whole week, and I had to be back to work Saturday morning. And I didn't mention it. We had arranged that Judy was going to be my ride back to Vegas on Friday morning. Now I had no ride. Now I had no ride back to Vegas. So I got on the bus in Phoenix, and Las Vegas to Phoenix is about a 5.5-hour drive. You probably can picture the geography. The bus went via Lake Havasu, which is sort of like going from Boston to New York via Syracuse.
Yes.
And so we stopped in Lake Havasu for lunch. I had no appetite. I wandered around this little mall and came to a gift shop, and there were mobiles in the window, and I realized, well, I don't think I'm going to live there anymore after this fiasco. So I went in to get a mobile for my apartment, and I saw this thing on the wall, and Judy at the time collected owls. There were owls all over the house, hanging from walls, macrame, all kinds of owls. And I saw this thing on the wall. It was a kind of a brass letter holder, and it had a very kind of fake jewel-encrusted owl on it. And the owl was upside down, and next to it, it said, "Nobody's perfect." So I bought it, and I walked into the card room Saturday morning. She was playing, and I just put the package down in front of her, and she looked up and she said, "Were you even in Phoenix?" And I said, "Yes." "Were you?" "Yes." So I guess this is the last chapter, chapter 3. So we spent that night together. I woke up the next morning and she said, "What's my new name going to be?" I moved into her house a week later. In fact, moved in the day that Reagan was shot, right at the end of March. And now, a week after that, excuse me?
A low-caliber gun.
Yeah.
He took a shot. What do you say?
Yeah.
But
a week later, I'm almost done. A week later, I flew east my parents were living in the Poconos, and my mother was dying. And the previous Christmas was the first New Year's I had missed spending with them, and I had promised to come home for my birthday. So there I was going to Pennsylvania for like 9 or 10 days, a week after we moved in. And we had agreed already, well, let's 6 months. If we still feel like this in 6 months, we should get married. Well, I was back with my parents about 2 days, and the question became, can we get married back there? And the answer was yes. So Judy flew to Pennsylvania, so we bucked the trend. We flew away from Vegas to get married. We got married. Oh, here's a nice touch, Ralph.
It was a beautiful. I put a camp up there. It's summer camp. It's absolutely God's camp.
Oh, yeah, it's great. So, my father got married at the age of 30, and a wonderful, wonderful marriage. And I had always thought, well, I can sort of get a pass on getting married till I'm 30, my father, right? And we got married on my 30th birthday. Perfect. In my parents' house, just a small number of people, but as I've written, there were a couple of nice Las Vegas touches after all. The ceremony was performed by a county judge who was under indictment, and he was assisted by a guy whose wife I had had an affair with 2 years earlier. Is that beautiful?
Yes, something to remember.
Nice kind of symmetry there, I think. So that's how. But we agreed later, and here's that if we had gone to that basketball game in Phoenix, there's a fair chance that would have been the end of things. We don't know. We only knew, Ralph, that by the time we met back in Las Vegas, we both realized how very much we wished we had been together in Phoenix. So it was that frustration and anticipation that made it that much better when it happened. It's crazy, huh? You just don't know how sequences of events are going to wrap themselves around an actual change in your life. You just don't know.
Yep, absolutely. Hey, let me tell you first that my Tally has tattoos, and she has a prominent owl tattoo on her shoulder. So with that in mind, I'll tell you a quick story how we met. I spent many years in camper vans and motorhomes in the Bay Area. Was a stay-at-home dad for my son's first 5 years, and when we split, I just didn't want to have roommates, and bought a van and used the Y and health clubs and lived out of vans. So I am walking from my van, which I couldn't park in Alameda. I had to park it in Oakland because of ordinances. As I'm walking to the bridge, which I call into Oakland, from Oakland into Alameda, and my Tally is walking a dog. I love dogs. And she's in front of the pet hospital walking one of the dogs. And a stately, not unattractive woman, I immediately made conversation, and we talked, and I called her back in a while, and same thing with you. We hit it off almost instantaneously. I moved into a house that she inherited with, so I wouldn't have to be van man after all those years. And we're together, and it's been 4 years. In June, it will be 4 years. It amazes me how my life has changed. I was such a and love will do that to you no matter when it hits.
Oh yeah.
So quite the coincidences with the Owls. One of the first weekends we were together, we went to an event. I forget what they call it. They capture herd birds and what have you, and send them back out when they're healthy. And we went to a fundraising
nice.
for them, and I can't think of what they call themselves, but they're a group of folks that are very owl-minded. So
nice.
the story fits in with mine, and tell me about Pete Rose. Now, you worked up at the Hall of Fame for years.
Oh boy.
I'm guessing that you've had interactions with the man, and tell me something we don't know about Pete Rose.
You're peering into a barrel of worms, Ralph.
I'm ready.
I know. What do I know? No, I never had any interaction with him. There was one day during induction weekend, he almost always showed up and had his own autograph thing going.
A little table outside the hall, and he'd make.
Yep. Sometimes on the street. He would be in different places.
Right.
And one weekend, I think I was still working at the Hall of Fame, and I passed by, and there was nobody around him. I thought, here's my chance. And then I thought about it some more. And I realized in that moment that if I could say one thing to him, it wouldn't be friendly. And so I kept walking. He should have been the poster child, as he was when he was playing, for a man of average abilities who, through drive, determination, hard work, enthusiasm, and a lot of other great qualities, made himself into a great figure. He should have been the emblem for what's best about baseball and why people should play baseball. And instead, he screwed it up for himself and everybody else, because now it's very difficult to celebrate him. The thing I know about him, from having lived in Las Vegas so long, is just how strong the grip of his gambling addiction is. He's still addicted. He's never repented of doing more than getting caught, and he's come to believe, I think, that because he only gambles legally now, that makes it okay. That the only problem was that he did it secretly and surreptitiously, and against the, original sin of baseball. So he's a sick man. He always has been. And it's a horrible shame. I idolized him. Ralph, he's one of 3 players only for whom during every day of his career I knew his season and career stats. And the other 2 were pitchers, Tom Seaver and Greg Maddux. I was obsessed with Rose. I became a switch hitter at the age of 12 because of Pete Rose. Go figure. I mean, playing wiffle ball and, street ball. batting cage. I wound up as a better left-handed hitter in a batting cage than righty, my natural way. Go figure. I was so that's how much I thought of him, but I feel pity and anger toward him. He's a sick man who never got help and who thinks he doesn't need help. And he soured the whole thing for all of us. I do think that someday he will be in the Hall of Fame, but I think, as in a number of other cases, the Hall will never let it happen while he's alive.
Leo DeRocher was a good example of that.
DeRocher, Bill Veeck, another huge example.
Wow. Baseball hated Bill Veeck. I don't understand that. He made it fun. He saw through them, the other owners, and he resisted their bullying as much as he could. Right. He was one of the most. I got the pleasure. Were you on the show at the George K. show when we had Mike Veeck on?
No, I wasn't, but I've met Mike, and a while back exchanged a couple of letters with him. Mike is terrific.
He really is. And,
Mike's taken all the best of his father and perhaps channeled it more practically. How's that for a way of putting it?
Well, he wasn't pissing people off all his life. How about that? That's another way of putting it. He is an extreme.
Well, he found his niche in independent ball where the premium was on having fun, and I think that was he came along at a perfect time for that.
Yeah.
And he's done well by it.
And they talk about Branch Rickey and Jackie. If Branch Rickey hadn't come along, Veeck would have been certainly the man to break the color barrier. He did it with Larry Doby in the American League. Soon after Jackie got
Satchel Paige.
Yeah, Satchel Paige, exactly.
Signed him twice.
Yeah, and then Minnie Minoso and Al Smith and those guys. He was, and there are stories that he wanted to break the color line in the 30s or early. There's 1942. He talked about in one of his books. I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. That was pretty convincingly debunked by a trio of historians. That first, it's some combination of wishful thinking and the presence of Landis. Right.
That in 1942 it would have been a pipe dream at best and not anything he would have spent time actually trying to put together because of Landis. It's like the switch was flipped when Landis died. Rickey signed Robinson, just a few months later, I think?
Right. Never would have happened if Landis lived. He was so dead set against it. Happy Chandler wasn't crazy about it.
Right.
But he saw the way of the future, at least. And look how far we've come. 60 years later, they're holding a woman up at Congress as a token. Never mind. We won't get into politics.
That was a close shave. Let me tell you a couple of...
you never know when it's going to happen.
That's right. Ralph, let's talk a little bit about...
I better go over here to the refreshment station and let you talk for a while. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to talk about going to spring training in Phoenix. Starting in 1981, I went to Phoenix almost every year for the next dozen years. Once down to Tucson. Generally for 4 or 5 days, made the rounds, and it was a much different experience from what people today experience in spring training, especially in Phoenix, which has become such a popular destination for the fans of teams in the Midwest. Back then, it was mainly the Cubs coming from the Midwest to train in Phoenix, and Hohokam Park, a great old park that's not there, not used anymore. But the great thing about going to the games in the 80s, Ralph, is that you could get close to the players. The stands weren't full. You could often sit wherever you wanted. You could be out there for an hour or two before the game. After the games, they would take batting practice, and we could go out beyond the fence and shag balls and snag a couple. You could go right up to the batting cages and the pitchers' mounds where they were warming up and talk to them. I used to love sitting behind the plate, and that was mainly where the scouts sat, and I met a lot of scouts back there. If I can drop a few names of guys I remember meeting: Herman Franks, Don Blasingame, a great old Met, Johnny Lewis, who hit the home run off Jim Maloney to break up his 10-inning no-hitter. I listened to that game and got to talk to him about it. I got to talk to Don Blasingame about seeing him hit a double in Philadelphia in 1961. Crazy. My favorite Scouts memory, Don Sutton was sitting about 6 rows behind me. Should have been in the late 80s. And over in the other aisle, maybe 30 feet away, was Chub Feeney, former NL president. And they got in a loud and very happy discussion of the good old days when people were trying to catch Sutton scuffing the ball and Feeney didn't do anything about it. They thought that was the funniest thing. And finally, Sutton yelled over, "Chub, how many balls did the Cubs send you that one game?" And Feeney yelled back, 41. 41. My other favorite memory, spring training, was in the Scottsdale, the new ballpark the Giants built in Scottsdale. Fantastic. It was built around the same time as Camden Yards and designed by the same people. And my friend and I were out on the berm in left center during batting practice, and Matt Williams was hitting. And I swear to you, there was at one point at which my friend and I were racing in opposite directions, both chasing a ball about to land over the fence, like 2 to 3 seconds apart. two at once, and off we went.
Wow, good memory.
Chili Davis was still a minor leaguer. It must have been 82, I think. And George and I are at the ballpark, and they announced this guy, Chili Davis, and George started, Chili, kind of, and he's screaming at him, "Show us something, Chili, show us something." And Chili hit a home run, gave George the evil eye as he crossed the plate. He showed us a lot before he was done.
Chili Davis has become a terrific batting coach.
Oh, I'm sure. You know, I think it helps to have been a switch hitter.
No question. And, speaking of the game of baseball and coaching, they're coaching this elevated swing. And from what I understand, the pitchers are about to beat that by more and more pitchers are throwing higher and higher because you can't elevate a swing on a high fastball.
It's far more difficult. Not impossible, but far more difficult. Yeah.
Impossible, but far more difficult. And I think, like with the shift and everything else in baseball, you start the game for one inning, this, that, and the other thing. There will be smart people that will counteract that in such a way that it will negate the shift. If you get a team of guys who want to left-hand hitters who want to hit inside out down third base, and I'll take a single or a double 3 or 4 times a day. That thing, they start to win. It will change whatever trend is going on. It will all even. You understand what I'm saying?
I have 2 thoughts about that. One, agreeing with you, and one, not so much. I think that the general historical trend in baseball is to regress toward the mean. When pitching gets a little heavy, rules, habits are changed, and the hitters gain a little bit. The hitters go a little too far, do something for the pitchers. It tends to bend back toward the middle. So in that sense, I think it's quite possible that will happen. I think, as I understand, part of the problem is that they're being taught that uppercut power swing first. And they're finding it difficult either mentally or physically, psychologically, to learn that second kind of swing. Because after all, it takes a different kind of swing to hit the outside fastball to left and to hit the inside fastball over the fence to right. That's what Tony Gwynn found out when Ted Williams, hang on, Ralph, that's what Tony Gwynn found out when Ted Williams got hold of him and said, on this particular pitch, you have to turn on it and drive it. And Gwynn did that for one season, and he hit 16 or 17 home runs. What the hitters don't realize, and I guess the hitting coaches aren't making them realize, is that the best hitters have always had more than one kind of swing. They didn't try to uppercut every single pitch and every single kind of pitch. Back in our generation, it was the 2 strikes and go to right, choke up a little and go to whatever. There are always antidotes and other ways to hit the ball. The really best hitters, Carew, Gwynn, Ichiro, had a different swing for every part of the strike zone and every trajectory of every pitch. That's why they were so good. So the notion that there's only one kind of swing that can be successful is the obstacle. They might know that it's possible strategically, but they just have to. Excuse me?
Add the minors and only that. What do you and
what's the thing? Well, yeah, they have to start out training them that way. I agree. But it has to be. They have to learn to do it that way. So I agree that I can see a generation, maybe not in our lifetimes, Ralph. Like there might be a generation where it comes back to the 70s, and we see, pitchers completing every 3rd or 4th start, and hitters hitting all over the ballpark. Who knows what those ballparks on the moon are going to be like? In the Intergalactic League, gravity's going to be different.
You talk about Mickey stepping in a drain. How about the players stepping in an entire cavern? It won't be easy.
Yeah.
It'll be an adjustment. You know what bothers me? We are finally going to lose the DH, or not lose.
The freedom from the DH.
absolutely.
It's coming. It's coming.
It is coming, and I think it will be part of the new bargaining agreement that's coming up between the association and Major League Baseball.
Yeah, in the next 5 years, I guess so. Yeah. So let's enjoy the memory of Bartolo Colon's home run a little while longer while we can.
Yes, indeed. That was the smile on his face made it all worthwhile, no matter who you were rooting for. In
that night I happened to be coming back from a day in Connecticut, and I listened to it happen on radio, but I had taped the game to watch on TV, so I really enjoyed it when I got to see it, having heard Howie Rose's call, and Howie, of course, went nuts.
Howie's great, and
I'm looking forward to listening to Howie again this season.
Well, we've got MLB.com has a package with $20 a year.
Yep, I've got it. I've always had it. Yep.
Every game, home announcers, away announcers.
Yeah.
Every game played and baseball is a radio game. It can be on in the background. You hear the babble, and you tune in just at the right time by the inflection of the.
Yep. Yeah, I'm enjoying rediscovering it up here. I might not even get MLB Network on TV. I might just commit to the radio for one season. I might not. Who knows?
Right. Well, I can get MLB on my computer and stuff. I can get a TV version on my computer. I choose that. And just be sitting and watching a game all day, every day. You know, there's much to do, but listening, having it on is tremendous. And who is your favorite announcer of your life?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I lived in Las Vegas for 14 years. And so my answer is Vin Scully, even though I've always rooted against the Dodgers. Listening to Vin Scully was like going on the radio. It's like going to the theater and being told a wonderful story with themes, sub-themes, plots, stars, surprises, surprise characters. It was a joy.
Surprise analogies.
Well, here's my favorite Vin Scully call was only about 10 words, and just so you're on the porch in an evening listening to a ball game, and here's the call. It's a fly ball lifted to right center. Butler over. He looks up into the night and plucks it out. Yeah, that's all. Poetry.
He had to be just dreaming along in a game, and he just wow.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Beautiful. That was Scully. People who only know him from television don't know him fully.
Well, people who haven't heard him do, and I might have referred him every time we talk about Vin Scully, I always talk about Sandy's Perfect Game.
Yeah.
That last.
Yeah. It's electrifying, isn't it?
I know. I think it was Amalfitano makes the last out. It was talk about an artist talking about art imitating life. It was just unbelievable. I didn't know what was better, Koufax's accomplishment or Vin Scully's accomplishment. And I've listened to
really?
Hundreds. Oh yeah.
Really? Let me mention a few others just because it's so easy to let Scully overshadowed so many people, but I was a big Red Barber fan growing up when he did the Yankees, and I was watching on TV the day that he got fired, or for which he got fired. It was a September Thursday afternoon game at Yankee Stadium. It was a makeup of a rainout, and they were playing the White Sox, and both teams were buried in the standings. And 503 was the paid attendance at Yankee Stadium. And Red Barber had the cameraman pan the empty stadium while he lectured, I'll say, the fans watching on TV about, basically getting their asses out to the ballpark. It's a ball game. And they fired him for it. My father had a beautiful expression. He must have used it that day, but I remember it from later. Anytime they would show the stands and the crowd was sparse, he would say, "Look at all the people who aren't there."
Yes, it's like a yogiism in a way.
It is. It is.
The restaurant's crowded. Nobody goes there anymore.
Exactly.
Gabriel, what a pleasure it is, and always has been, and will
always, Ralph. Yeah, this is cool. This is a lot of fun.
If you think it's fun, then I'm so happy because I think the festival. This is my only skill.
Being a mensch is your only skill, huh?
No, I'm a mensch in a way. Not always. I'm a human being, first and foremost.
Yeah.
Human being, but I'm just doing the best I can, and I live with the results, and that's all I can do. Is the best I can do.
Yep.
Severely limited, as we all are being human, and just the way it is. But I do talk sport. I do find the most interesting, knowledgeable, articulate people to talk sports with. Mostly baseball and politics too. Every now and again, we can do that sometime without throwing up. Maybe it won't be easy. But all we can just stick to baseball. I may divorce politics altogether and just pick up on it 6 years down the road and see what happens. It's pretty disgusting, the age we live in. And
it worked for me.
All right, my friend. Thank you again. It's the comfort zone.
It was great, Ralph. Till next time.
Till next time, and we'll keep this regular as we can. Please join us this coming Sunday on the George Case Show, and same numbers if you would, and if you can. All right, you're gone, but you'll listen to this and realize you had an invitation to the George Case Show. This is the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I am Ralph Tyko, and they call me the Zig Zag Man. I have fun, and if it ain't fun, it shouldn't be getting done. Adios, everybody. Thanks for listening. The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.